It's 1680. Imagine driving up here in your horse and cart and you come through this arch and you see
the magnificent Château of Rosieres, which has been rebuilt after decades of devastating civil wars.
Now you need somewhere for your coach and horses to go once you get out and go into the beautiful chateau. And so what did the owners build in the 17th century?
A coach house.
A coach house. And so this is our coach house, and it's our first big renovation project, which is coming towards the end of completion, isn't it? I hope
Hopefully.
so. And we'd like to give you a little tour of it before it's finished. When we first arrived, the coach house was beyond disrepair. It was falling down. We didn't know if it could be brought back to life, but we really wanted to try.
And we've spent the last 2 years trying to bring this beautiful old building back to life.
Today we're going to take you on a tour of the old coach house and show you what we've done so far and what we hope to do in the future. When we arrived, there were the doors on here?
Yeah.
There were doors, but they were kind of old, broken doors, weren't they?
Yeah.
And there were sort of the remains of window frames and some slightly broken shutters. And all of this, all of the ground had washed inside, and it looked basically completely derelict, didn't it? Baby love, look at this! Yeah! Clement loves it in here, and we'll let him run around now. Oh. It's difficult to describe quite how derelict this was. It hadn't been touched in a couple of 100 years, I don't think, had it? And the ground was just covered in debris that had been washed in, hadn't it?
All the ceiling had gone. The beams had to be held by big posts. There was half of the floor was lying on the ground, and yeah, there was just nothing. It was actually unsafe to come in the house.
And we just didn't know what to do with it to begin with. But then we had the vision for our retreat centre that this ground floor would be a kind of multi-purpose space of a cafe, catering space, meeting space, and just generally lovely space for us as well. And in fact, the reason we're a bit pressed to finish this soon is because we want to live in here this winter. We want to move in before the baby comes, hopefully. Not just in this bit, but upstairs, which we'll show you soon. And we want to vacate the chateau completely so that we can do our renovations there without worrying about having brick dust in our children's lungs and things like that. So I thought maybe you could tell them a bit about the history down here and what we found, some of the bits we found.
We actually don't have a record that it was a coach house, but we have a lot of hints that suggest it was used as one. What lets us think that it was used as a coach house is the main door, which is wide enough for a carriage to come in. And also, when we renovated, we found in this corner the remains of a little forge that was completely buried into the ground. And behind, under the dirt around this forge, we found a lot of horse-related metal work.
There were horseshoes,
moss, remains of carriage wheels as well.
Oh yeah, we found quite a large part of an old carriage wheel in here, which was pretty cool.
All this let us think that it was the main use of the building, at least for some time.
It was also quite logical because, as you saw, the old entrance to the chateau came down below the main building, and if you were coming up in a carriage, the main objective would be to drop the fancy people somewhere where they didn't get themselves too messy, and then take the coaches and carriages off the back. And you wouldn't want them sort of driving around the side of the chateau or anything like that. And so this building sat low and in front of the main chateau, was perfectly situated. I mean, we say 1680 is the date because that's when they did huge works on the chateau. It's the date on that archway. It seems about right for this building, but we don't actually know. It might have been something else before, and then used as a coach, adapted to being a coach house in the same way that we're now adapting it into being a restaurant, cafe kind of space.
We actually know that this building hasn't been always as it looks now, because we found the remains of a vault, the base of a vault running along the wall behind us. And it's quite likely that at some point the vault collapsed and took down all the front of the building. We know that because we have gaps in the masonry on either side of the house, and a different building style at the front and the back of the house. All the back of the house was masoned with clay, whereas all the front is masoned with lime. And so it's two very different building faces. The openings suggest that the front of the house are a lot later than the ones at the back. So we think that this building would originally have been a cellar. Well, the ground floor of this building would have been used as a cellar. And after the vault collapsed and they rebuilt the side of the house, it was turned into a coach house.
He's found some treasures from the plumbing.
Then we don't have any record of the use of it in the 19th century. All we know is that in the 1950s there was nobody living in it, and the ground floor was used as a storage for beekeeping tools.
Yeah.
So the owners would store their hives. So it was basically used as a garden house in the 20th century.
I mean, at the point before 1680, it was still a huge amount of war going on around here, so you wouldn't have been prancing up to your chateau and jumping out of your carriage and stuff necessarily, because you would have been in danger of being attacked. So it could have been something just storage, like you say, before that point, a farm building or something, couldn't it?
If it was a cellar, it's quite likely that they would use it for making cheese, storing vegetables, and do all sorts of farm-related things.
Because you also, the reason you would have a cellar above ground here is because everything's built on the rock. In the main chateau, it's quite amazing because we have the bedrock flowing up into the building work in parts, and so there are no cellars, there's no secret tunnels or anything because it's just solid granite. And they had a need to preserve food throughout the year, and so a quarter of the ground floor of the main chateau is used as a cellar, and probably buildings like this were as well, weren't they?
Yeah, the way they would build cellars at the time is they would just have a vaulted building and shovel some earth on top of it to keep it cool.
And so what we like to do in our renovations is kind of start it with a bit of an archaeological exploration as we're undoing work that's been done in later centuries, or working with artisans to see how we can actually stabilise the building. We kind of discover lots of little bits like the forge, and what we like to do is then incorporate them into the finished product. So when we were planning this, we didn't plan to have a forge in the kind of corner of the room, but we wanted to commemorate its old use and make it have some character as well.
So whenever we found an old feature we thought was worth saving, we just left it as it was in order to not to erase all the history of the building.
And that's why we're really careful about who we work with on our buildings, and we choose to work with local artisans who are used to historic buildings, because they're passionate about them and they're interested in what we find and they're knowledgeable about what they might be.
In our area there are dynasties of workers who have been doing the same métier, the same job from each generation over centuries. And so there's a lot of local savoir-faire about local building techniques that have been transmitted from generation to generation, even though they're not aware about it. And we love discussing with the worksmen about how they traditionally do, because we can find by talking with them how the reason why they built in a way, or how to work with the stone of the area.
And we couldn't possibly do these jobs ourselves. The masonry required to bring this back to life was phenomenal, and we would have, even if we tried ourselves, we'd still be doing it years later, and we'd have made a massive hash of it, because it's a little arrogant to think that you can do a job as well as people who've been doing it for decades, with knowledge handed down for generations. So we keep, for us, the work that doesn't require skill, essentially.
When we dug out the dirt that was in this building, we found one coin that was dated 1724, and so we know that this building is actually at least older than that.
Where did you find it?
It was right here.
But someone could have dropped that just looking around it. So we know it's older than that, but well, they could have dropped it 100 years later. We suspect.
Well, we know the house was on the Napoleonic map in 1836. So okay.
But as we were saying about the bedrock, this is an example of it. It's flowing into the room, and in fact, it's one of the problems we've got at the moment is to sort the drainage out so that the water literally doesn't flow under the wall above the bedrock, which it's doing at the moment. In fact, I can see a plant root. So
we found a lot of tree roots in the building when we excavated. Actually, to excavate the dirt, I came inside the building with the digger and moved all the dirt out of the building through the door.
You could just get through, couldn't you, with the arm of the digger? It only just came through. And sadly, this was before we were really filming ourselves doing it, but it was pretty amazing.
We think this was probably the original entrance of the building. So we are on the side of the building.
And the chateau's up
and
there.
The chateau's up there. And there would have been a vault lengthwise, so you would have come through this door into a very long vaulted room.
And the only reason that we didn't open this so far, it's a possibility in the future,
Yes, it is, yes.
this is what Mark wants to do, is because in the garden renovations that we think took place in probably the 19th century, they built the garden up to make some terraces, and so the ground actually goes down like this now. So you couldn't open that because you'd have to crawl through like a hobbit and then drop down.
I'm working towards
Mark
convincing
desperately
Amy
wants to
open this.
re-landscape and open this door. My only concern is that the more doors you have, the less furniture you can have, because it means you have to have a passage for people to walk past, and so you can't have tables here and things, and it might be a little impractical. Mark doesn't care about that. He wants the romance of the old door open. This is the old forge, and what happened when we decided to retain it, the stonemason dismantled the whole thing and then rebuilt it in a slightly prettier way, but with the same stones. And we also managed to hide, up the old chimney, we hid some of the electrical cables that go up to the top floor. It's all about trying to disguise the modern appliances where we can, which is actually relatively easy in a building with big line joints like this, because we can put them behind the line before it's redone.
It's actually easier to hide behind plasterboard.
Yeah, okay, so it is easier to hide electrics behind plasterboards, but yeah, can you imagine if we just come in here and put plasterboards all around the edge? It's just the most beautiful room. We love being in here. We had the first real event we had in here was Clement's baptism with about 40 people, and it was cold, and we put the stove on and it warmed the whole place up. It was wonderful. And there's one very important part of our renovation here we need to tell them about. The ceiling.
Yes. The ceiling was quite a big undertaking because it had completely collapsed. And all the beams needed changing, and in order to redo it, we just redid it exactly the way it was, with using the same positions for the beams. But we used wood from the estate. So we had some leftover Douglas fir that were planted in the 60s that were bringing a lot of shade along the main driveway. And so we cut them down, took them to the sawmill in the next village to have one side flattened, and took them back to use as beams. And same for the wooden floor at the top. It's all made from wood from the estate.
Because one of our main driving forces here is to be sustainable, to use what we've got as much as we possibly can, and if not what we've got, then something local. We did a talk recently for the French Heritage Society in which we talk a lot in depth about our ethos for renovating and running the estate, and how we want to make it both sustainable for environmental reasons but also self-sustaining economically, and that's part of our plan. So when we harvest trees that are ready to be cut down, we sell some of them to pay for the work that cut them down, and we use the rest ourselves, and so you end up with a zero cost work.
Almost.
I knew you were going to say that, that's why I looked at you. That's the dream anyway.
One feature I love in this room that we've left are the old shutters that we haven't touched.
Yeah.
Because we thought they were extremely pretty. So this is these are probably the original shutters from when the coach house was built, when this side of the coach house was built. They're all nailed and reinforced, with all the hinges, and we thought it was
really.
really worth saving them. So we just let them as they were.
But when we redid the windows, we got another local person who actually lives next to the sawmill in the next village to make them, and to make them out of chestnut wood, which is the most famous wood in the area. Ardèche is famous for chestnuts. All food is made with chestnuts. They're a pretty big deal here, and the wood is really lovely as well. But you know, it's little
very
details.
resistant.
It's very resistant, but it's these little details that we're trying to keep of the original way things would have been done. They would have used the local wood. That's really pretty. Where did we get these from?
This window was missing when we arrived, and the other one had its original ironwork. And the carpenter who built the windows found this one from, it comes from another chateau in the area where he had redone the windows.
I hadn't even seen the little lion's head on there.
Yeah, it's actually the other one's a lot simpler. This one's quite elaborate. The coach house isn't completely furnished and running yet, but I have a little piece of furniture we put here that I found really charming actually, and that really suits this coach house. It is this one. Do you know what it was for?
I heard you telling somebody about it the other day. It was something to do with cheese.
Yes. So this little piece of furniture is made from local wood as well. It's mostly sweet chestnut and pine, and it was used for draining cheese. Well, draining and drying. So there is a lattice at the bottom where that would let the air flow through. There would have been a lid on here to protect it from the dust and so you would just lay your cheese in here and let it drain and dry. And so I really love having this little piece of furniture in this building, because I think it's the kind of furniture that would originally have been here at the time it was a cellar.
Who wants to play table football? You
The
might
table
remember,
football's not original.
No, but you might remember from our week in the life of a medieval chateau that Mark bought this at an auction and restored it, and we do use it. And Clement knows how to play with it as well. And so it's far from finished, but this part of the room will be cafe related, so coffee machines, tea machines, sort of a kitchen that's more presentable, you know, a nice cooker, an island, and then through there will be a toilet, and through the other side will be a very small professional kitchen, which we've yet to kit out because we don't know what a professional kitchen definitely needs, because we're not professional chefs. But we've got the basic infrastructure in there, we just need to refine it a little bit.
So here we're not quite done yet, but there will be a sink where people will be able to wash their hands. So we found an old lion's head that my brother gave us for my birthday. And so there will be a really nice sink on top of this piece of furniture, which is an old dough box that we have below the dough box a nice stone
Trough.
A stone trough that we will use as a sink. Then this is the loo. We have the door of the loo was reused from the second floor of the house, because we were knocking down a modern 19th century separation wall. This wall was blocking a beautiful 17th century room, but we found that the door was actually really pretty. and it's also locally made from sweet chestnut wood and pine wood. So it's both quite rustic but quite sophisticated, and so we decided to use it for in the cafe. This is a big plank of elm that will go below the sink. It's an elm that died in the 1980s at my parents' house, and the planks had been sitting in a barn for over 40 years, and I thought it would be really nice to bring this part of my childhood home into our new home. So it's also beautiful wood. We will oil it in order to protect it from the splash, and yeah, it will. So that's a job for the next few weeks. And sorry, I'm just moving that because I have to show.
This is what you're most proud of, isn't it?
I'm putting it in place. So at last, behind this door, we have a cupboard. This is an idea I'm quite proud of, actually. That's the front of an old wardrobe, probably late 18th century, early 19th. And the cupboard itself was quite bashed and eaten with worms, but the front was still perfectly nice. And I had the idea to use it as cupboard, the front of a cupboard, for hiding the technical about the pipes and the hot water balloon in the loo. So it will be locked and it won't be. It's not meant to be open, but we'll be able to hang a couple of brushes and things like that, and especially hide all of that behind a really nice wooden front. So yeah, I'm quite happy with this idea. Amy wasn't quite sure when I told her, but yeah, I think she agreed when I did it.
We're not very good at planning our interior decor in advance. We're not people who have mood books and things we're going to buy from certain places. What we tend to do is just, over time, we buy things that inspire us and see if they fit places. And one of the things, we used to have this in the kitchen, but this is an old, these are shelves from an old boulangerie in Lyon, which is again a local town for us. And I just think they look really nice in here. They may not fit long term, but for the moment they really fit the vibe of a sort of rustic cafe. And we've been doing a few talks recently for the public and open days and things, and Mark's able to display some of his stuff up here with the history and some pictures of the house in the past. Hello, my love. He loves it down here. And we also have been bringing in sort of a lot of modern stuff in here. So we have speakers in the ceilings, we have a place to put a projector, and we have underfloor heating. So it's actually going to be an extremely comfortable and fun place to hang out too. What do you think, my baby? You want to play table football again, do you?
sweet chestnut wood. We need to actually sandblast it to get the wood, the color of the wood back. And what's really nice is that there are a lot of wrought nails in it, which are actually well, really old.
We just had to redo the bottom, didn't we?
Yeah, we just put a splashback in sweet chestnut as well, so that when we sand it, it will look nice.
Beautiful.
As the original one.
If I can get in. Here we go.
The latch is not original actually, because the previous one was broken. So the wrought iron had snapped off. So we had to change it. So I got don't remember where I got this one actually. Probably from a brocante.
That's what we do. We tend to sort of stock up on things when we find them in brocantes and keep them in boxes to use on stuff later.
But I used the same wrought iron nails that are probably old ones. I keep finding old nails whenever I dig the ground, and whenever I find one I put it in a box because they are so much nicer than modern ones. So
they've got kind of slanty tops on them, haven't they? They
you
really
can
nice.
see all the marks of the hammer, how they were all each handmade. So I think it's really worth saving.
Do come in.
So it's still a work in progress. We mainly have paint to do, and just the finishing touches, put some nice lighting.
But taking you back to what we wanted to do in here, again, like below, we wanted to keep the original features as much as possible. And so we decided to, instead of cramming a whole load of small rooms into here, because the ceilings were so high, we decided to make just 2 big rooms, especially because with retreats, you often get shared bedrooms, and so it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. You could easily have 3 people share this room, which brings the costs down for people who are coming to the retreat, and it means we can have a nicer room. But part of that was we had to divide it up at all. We had to put in plasterboard, and that's been a real debate for us about what we do with it and how we make it, whether we make it very obviously modern or whether we try to blend it in with the original. And Mark has come up with quite a cunning idea about how to do it. We've got the nice beams at the top, and we've got old doors from the top floor of the chateau, and then we've got these beautiful old walls, and then a huge big expanse of plasterboard. And your idea is
to put wood panels in front of the plasterboard.
We're kind of agreed on the wood panels, but not how high they're going to be. I reckon they should be a bit lower than that. Mark thinks they should be up here somewhere. But we think that would break up, that would mean there's minimal big flat white space, or whatever colour we paint it, in the way. Actually we're going for kind of pinky white at the moment. Seems quite nice.
Fuchsia.
Not fuchsia pink. A very, very slightly pinky white is our current favourite. And we think that would look really nice, because then you'll have the bigger bed here, panels up to here, maybe a picture on the wall here, picture on the wall here, and then you've not got a huge expanse of space, have you? Do you want to show them some of the original features of this room?
Yes, I do. So we've kept most of actually all the old features we could find. The doors actually, as below, reclaimed from the second floor of the house. We've kept this beautiful fireplace.
Because this is where the coach person would have slept, isn't
this
it?
would have, this bit would have been the kitchen, dining room area. So they would have heated this place using this fireplace. And next to it, ancestor of the cooker. To cook their meals, people would take embers from the fire, put them in these cast iron thingies, and put their pans over it to heat it. And so it means they would have been able to simmer things for a long time without it being dangerous, because it doesn't burn anymore and the ashes fall underneath here on the spider web, and then they just remove the ashes with the shovel from the potager. So this one is actually quite modern because it's made of brick, but it's still probably somewhere in the 19th century. And we also have a little sink here. It's also made of brick, and the kitchen cupboard.
It could have been kitchen
which
slash
is
bathroom.
which is inside the wall, and I find it really cool as well. So we've kept it.
Mark
as
was really,
original.
really adamant that we kept all of these original features, and we had some difficulty planning the bathrooms and everything because of that. But it does look really nice.
Yeah, I think it makes the room a lot more interesting than it would have been otherwise. Behind the cluster, here we found this little niche that had been blocked, so it was completely walled, but we could see carved stones and a nice little space in there. So we unblocked it, and these were actually places where you would have been able to put your lamp oil or your candle or whatever you were using to get some light in the evening. And so it would have been also quite safe because it was inside the wall with only stone around. So and just created a little lighty bit. And so we've decided to keep it as for its original purpose. And so we've wired it so we'll be able to put a little lantern or something in it.
So just a bit more atmosphere again in here.
Exactly.
And there's a couple of those. And then under the windows, we decided to make benches that you could sit on and look out the windows, because I'm quite fond of the view around here.
One other cool thing we found behind the cluster is this.
Oh yeah.
So this, I was quite intrigued when we found it. It was also covered with plaster, and it's really interesting because it's a different type of stone as the rest of the house. So it's a piece of reclaimed stone. It's a kind of sandstone that we can't find in the area. It comes from down the Rhône Valley. But it was used in the past for carving because it's a lot softer than the local granite, and so it was used for making more ornamental features. And I think this one, this particular bit of stone, was the leg of a fireplace.
Oh yeah.
And what I found really interesting is that we have remains of paint on it. Blue paint that look like marble, and so it's it would have been it could have been some 17th century fireplace that was reused here. So the problem is that it's really soft stone compared to the granite, and so when we repointed the wall, the mason sandblasted all the stones, and so I had to ask them to protect this stone with the cardboard so that it wouldn't damage the original paintwork. So I was really pleased that we managed to save it, because it's also another interesting little snippet of history. From in that coach house.
The bathrooms in between are not particularly of interest because they're just inside the plasterboard walls at the moment, but we will show you when we start renovating them. And so, this room, there's no major features like the other room, but apart from the rainwater gatherer, collector over here.
Yeah, we had this interesting feature. We didn't know what it was originally, but it's something we've seen in in some of our other buildings. We're still not 100% sure of the original use for it, but we think it might have been used for collecting rainwater, because the water was really precious in the area because it can get really dry. And you imagine that if there was a hole up here in the roof, you would have collected water from all the way down the roof into here. So you can imagine there might have been a pipe or something that would enable you to fill a big jar that you put down here. So that's just a hypothesis, we're not completely sure, but it seems like quite a likely use for it.
Yeah.
We have, well, the other feature we have is this corner, which is the chimney of the forge we saw below. It's nice and rounded, and so we decided to leave it as well as part of the history, even though it's not any use anymore. No. And we also have two small niches. So I think this one wasn't used for lighting because it's it's lined with wood. So it might have been a little cupboard, but the other one was definitely the same as on the other side.
And what I really like about these two rooms is that although they've got some similar feelings to them, because of where they're located, they have quite a different atmosphere. They're lovely and bright because they have windows on three sides, but that side looks out into the Ardèche mountains and the forest, and it feels quite contained and mysterious. And this room, my dream is that we'll have a bed here that will look out. Through that window you can see the Alps, and then through the other windows you can see the chateau, and it feels much lighter and more open, which is quite wonderful. They're going to have really different characters, the two rooms. Oh, and there's a little window up there. We did keep everything really. We've got tiny windows that we had window frames made for so that we could keep them still in here. And so really we wanted to show you this before we get to the point of finishing it, because I think you can still see the massive amount of work that's gone into it that we've had to do already before we make it pretty. And the last thing to show you probably is the tiles, which are made in a small company not very far north of here, and they fire them in individual lots, so they all have slightly different colours. And we've put them in the pattern of another chateau that we went to visit. So we've kind of tried to plan it with all these different things in mind, haven't we?
Yeah, we've tried to keep to respect the essence of the building and make it as it would have been, but probably actually even more beautiful than it would, because it would have been a lot more rustic than it is now. So we made it a lot more luxurious, but still in the style it would have been. Yeah.
And we're really looking forward to spending some time in here ourselves and living in here this winter, hopefully, with all its wonderful underfloor heating and floors that the baby can run around on without falling over. So we hope you enjoyed our tour, We'll gradually do you tours of all the other buildings. It's like a small village here and the main chateau, but we're about to start a huge amount of work on this building, so we wanted to show you first.